Okay, we are recording, and let's do this. You guys ready? You ready to rock?
Heck
Yep,
yes,
let's do it.
Stuart.
All right, cool. Well, hey, this is Filling the Storehouse podcast, and we have a pretty awesome guest on today, Carl Jensen. We're going to talk all things investments, fire, community, real estate, everything. And he is a fellow Coloradan, so we can talk about that a little bit too. So,
Coloradan,
Col-
Coloradian,
Col- Color-
Coloradan,
Color-
Coloradon.
Col- Coloradian.
Yeah, I think you're right,
That
Stuart.
one? I think it's that one. Carl, how do you say it?
I now I don't want to answer because you guys are going to make fun of me, which would be perfectly fine. We're all transplants, right? Are any of you natives, or are either of you natives? Or
Nope.
I'm like half native. Does that count? My dad and that side of the family is from here, but I did not grow up here.
yeah, kind of. I'll give you some points for that. No
I
one you
think so.
meet in Colorado is actually a native. They've got that bumper sticker with the native thing on there. But
Yeah.
I guess back to your question, I would probably say Coloradan, but I don't know.
That's probably
These are the important things that we discuss on this podcast, Carl. These are what the people want.
Let's get to the bottom of it. We'll get lots of angry hate mail from natives.
From the natives.
So, Carl, where are you? Where are you from? Where did you kind of grow up? And just if you could tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I grew up outside of Chicago, a northwest suburb. We lived in Wisconsin for about 6 years. Then we came to our senses. Not that Wisconsin and Chicago aren't great places, but you don't see the sun for like 8 months during the winter. That's how much winter lasts there. You feel kind of suicidal towards the end of it. You think the sun has gone out. So we came to our senses and moved to Colorado way back in 2012. We've been here ever since, never looked back, and loving life. So the sun, it's a beautiful day right now, actually, looking outside.
Yeah, I was going to ask you from the Midwest when we started talking. I was like, oh man, this sounds very, very Midwesty to me. So,
Oh man,
cool.
I try to not talk with my accent, but see, it just came across there.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with new people, I get a little bit nervous, and then it just all comes back. So,
well, my wife is from Wisconsin. We run our business out of Wisconsin. We are big fans of the Midwest and Wisconsin. So,
yeah,
and they have, much like Colorado, amazing beer in Wisconsin. That's one thing that New Glarus in particular is something that we miss quite a bit. So,
oh, that place is great. Yeah, New Glarus, and I miss the beer and the cheese curds. The cheese curds were pretty epic out there. It's probably better for my cardiovascular system that I don't live there anymore.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself. You're obviously very humble, and I would direct people to, we'll get into this later, some of your blogs, some of your upcoming podcast, your website, because I'll tell you, I was fascinated. I was on your website, just kind of reading about, what I was distilling out and as your why and kind of what makes you tick. And I was extremely impressed. And you obviously put a lot of diligence, a lot of time into creating this vision and then turning that vision into action. And then that action is now, has propelled you to levels that I think when I was looking at it about four times what your desired end state was when you started the journey. So just kind of curious if you could walk us through just what all that means, you retire early and the passion that you had to really grab life. And I think you said before your worm food in about 80 years, you wanted to achieve some things. So just talk us through some of that.
Yeah. So I wish I could have a better story. I will tell you my story, but some of these people you come from, you hear about financial independence, and when they were 18, they read a blog, they got some side hustles going. When they were 22, they retired, and boom, now they're in Southeast Asia or whatever these people do. But my story is a little bit different. When I was a kid, I could tell my parents weren't very good with money. My dad was a construction worker, and during the summer, he would have tons of jobs. All this money would be coming in. We'd be going out to eat. Life was great. And then fall would come around and he'd get laid off. And we'd have this sad conversation around the dinner table. We'd have this little family meeting where my mom would be like, kids, we have to talk. And like, your dad got laid off again. He probably won't be working for a while. We're going to have to buckle down. So, and this would happen every year. So after a couple of years of this, I'm like, well, why aren't they maybe saving a little bit more money when he is working? And but anyway, I was probably 12 or 13, and this conversation rolled around again. My mom's like, hey, we want you to come down. We need to have a family meeting. I'm like, yeah, I've been through this. I know what's going to happen. But this time they seemed a little bit sadder. I'm like, well, what's going on? Like, this happens every year. Like, we're not going to lose the house or anything like that, are we? And my mom's like, well, we're probably not going to lose the house. And I'm like, whoa, like, probably implies that there's a chance that we will in fact lose the house. This is I think I was 12 or 13. This is pretty terrifying. Holy crap. So this instilled in me a deep sense of financial insecurity. So the first thing I probably thought of back then was, I need to go to college. No one in my family had ever gone to university. Like, I need to find some way to earn a good amount of money. And that's what college was to me. It wasn't to go party or anything like that. It was to go get a major in something good. And I was considering the military actually too, which is a whole other story. But I needed to get some form of higher education, and then I needed to save my money. So as soon as I got out of college, I just started shoveling money away. And like I said, it wasn't coming from any good place. It was coming from this insecurity that I had as a result of my childhood. Uh, so fast forward a couple of years, I get to be 37, and my job was great. I was a software developer, but it was pretty stressful. So the stress was really getting to me at that point. I thought it was going to kill me, actually. There was one point where I thought the software had a bug. I thought it was my fault. I thought I was going to get fired or potentially even kill someone. It was a medical device. It turned out none of that happened, but it caused me to hit up the internet and Google something like, how do I retire early? And up came these blogs. I remember the two that came up were Get Rich Slowly, which is JD Roth, and the other one was Mr. Money Mustache. And so I started reading the Mr. Money Mustache one, and the first thing I thought was, geez, this is I've stumbled upon some kind of scam, like no one retires when they're 31 like this guy. This is just nonsense. I had never known anyone in my family to stop working before like 65 or 70. One person even died on the job. And then I started reading it a little bit more. I'm like, oh, well, this is just a math problem. You save up a certain amount of money, and then when you can cover your expenses 25 times, the 4% rule, you can pretty much stop working. And so that's what I did. I discovered that I already had savings because of that financial insecurity. My goal was $1 million to retire on. It turned out that wouldn't have been enough, but the markets have done really well, and it was enough. Plus, I have what I call wife-fi or spouse-fi. At the same time I quit, my wife, Mindy, actually unexpectedly went back to work. So I have that going for me now. So life is good. That's my story in 5 minutes or however long.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Carl's additional significant other is Mindy Jensen, and most of our listeners probably know of Mindy from Bigger Pockets. She's has her own podcast. She's written some books, and she does a bunch of real estate stuff too. So,
Stu, you were on the show on her show, weren't you?
Yeah, I was early on. I actually got to go into the studio in Bigger Pockets. I think it was in the early 30s, like 30, 32, 33, something like that.
Have you been invited back? Or?
I haven't been invited back. No. So Carl, if you want to put a good word in for me, that'd be great.
Was that the Bigger Pockets money show, or was
Yeah.
that the real estate show? Okay.
Yeah, the money one. Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, it was fun. But yeah, so back to kind of your story of getting into this movement. You sounds like you started with reading Mr. Money Mustache stuff, and so where did you kind of go from there? Like, what were kind of like the first moves that you made to kind of get going on this thing?
Yeah, well, the first move was actually a physical move. We had this big house. It was like it was almost 5,000 square feet. It was pretty silly because the thing had like 4 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and it had a basement. I was getting ready to finish it off, put another bedroom and bathroom in there. So since there's 4 people in our family, each human would have had 1.25 toilets, which is the ultimate first world problem.
Yeah, absolutely a necessity, right?
Yeah. So we sold this house and we bought one for less than half that much. It was a 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom foreclosure that was infested with rodents and ants. Luckily, our children were too young to appreciate it. If we tried to pull a move like that now, they'd probably they would mutiny against me and go find a foster home or something like that. But back then, they didn't know any better, so it was acceptable. We quickly fixed up that house. So that was a big major move. We also started keeping track of our spending. I never really kept track of where the money was going, and that was eye-opening because probably similar to most people, I had downplayed it in my head, like, yeah, I'm probably spending like 30 or 40,000 a year on most of our expenses, and it turned out to be a lot more than that. And I was kind of surprised how some of the silly little things add up, like going out to eat, and if you drink fancy beer, that can quickly put a little dent in your budget.
Yeah, that I can envision that one putting a little dent in I don't know if I want to count to that level of detail because I'll be afraid of what I discover.
It is scary, and it does kind of shock you. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? You need to make a little course correction. Travel too. That was a lot of money.
And I also want to, I guess, a couple points of clarification. And just to go back, because I can't let this point go, Stu. One of my favorite stories is that you got kicked off of Bigger Pockets and had to reach out to Mindy. But that's a separate thing. That was one of my favorite things ever. But that aside, I think you kind of painted an austere picture, right? You had this beautiful big house, which most Americans, they think that that's their dream, right? You've made it when you have this 1.25 bathrooms per person in the house. And you went down to a 2-bedroom roach infested, ant infested house and cut all your expenses and your life sucked. Is that how it was? Or can you kind of talk us through like what, and no more fancy beer, right? So like, that all these things are terrible things, but I know that's not true. And it kind of help us understand the full picture of what that looks like. What's the why? Like, why do you do that? And what's the ultimate results of that, and kind of the strategy that you employed?
Yeah, well, I guess our life, I was unhappy in that big house. We lived in a neighborhood that didn't really have values that aligned with us. For example, our cars are from 2003 and 2010. And I'm a car guy. I love cars. I could talk your face off about cars, but they're unnecessary. They're kind of a silly expense to me. And I have had a fancy car, so you can call me out on that too. But the thing was, we lived in this nice neighborhood, really nice neighborhood, and all the high school kids had fancy cars. I remember there was these twins that lived across the street. For their 16th birthday, they got brand new matching Camaros, the new Camaro. And then a couple weeks later, one of them hit a tree. He was fine, and then the parents run out and buy him another one to replace it.
Oh.
And I think we did. It was kind of uncomfortable. I never felt like we fit in, and maybe I read too much into it, but I kind of felt like we were being judged a little. We didn't have community. We didn't have the friends that we wanted or needed. So when we moved to this other neighborhood, it was in Longmont, the home of Mr. Money Mustache. Actually, there was kind of a built-in community here. So despite moving to this much lesser of a house, we were actually happier. We had a street with a lot of kids the same age as ours, so they would just go out there. It was a dead-end street. They could ride bikes all day. And people with similar values. And I thought, if there was any unhappiness from moving to the big house, it was more than made up for in the happiness that we had living in this new community with people who had values more aligned with ours.
And there's so much there that that I'd love to dig into. I mean, we could probably, just on this little section, we could probably spend the next 45 minutes. One thing that I really want to hit on that I absolutely love is just this idea of happiness and the values beyond that, behind that, idea of happiness. To you, what is happiness, Carl? I mean, because I know a lot of people have different thoughts and opinions on it.
Yeah, and my air compressor just went off. I forgot to turn that off. Can you hear it?
No, you're good, man.
No.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. If you can. Yeah, happiness is an interesting thing, and it's kind of the most important consideration of all this, because we've had the fancy house. I also bought, I mentioned I was a car guy. My dream car was always this Japanese sports car called an Acura Nsx. And well, let's go on a sidetrack about the Acura Nsx. I bought this thing. It was $45,000. Kind of weird buying a 25-year-old car that costs $45,000. That's a Honda. But it was kind of fun driving it for a little while, but then it just became another thing to worry about, a shiny thing that you had to worry about someone hitting it in a parking lot. And I found the most fun thing with the NSX was there was a local Nsx Owners Club where you'd all meet up and talk with other NSX owners. But one day I'm sitting at this thing, having a great time talking to these other people. And I thought, how ironic is this? The best part of owning this car is when the car is out there in the parking lot. I'm just happen to be talking to other people with a similar interest. I found that's the case for a lot of things in life. Like some of the projects I'm working on here, I own a co-working space, so interacting with the co-owners and the people who come there to work. We're thinking about opening up a brewery, and that's another thing I would do with friends. Not really to make money; it has to make money, but that's not the core purpose. The core purpose of it is to collaborate on a fun project with friends. And that's why, Stuart, what you mentioned, you might come up here to work on those veterans homes. I'd love to do that. Not because I like swinging a hammer all day, although I kind of like that. It'd be fun meeting some people like you and other people with common interests who want to do some good in the world. How awesome is that?
Yeah.
So yeah, happiness is a tricky thing to wrap your mind around, but I think the most important part of it, for me at least, is surrounding yourself with people who you really care about and people who you can depend on and call true friends, that type of thing, and family too. Although modern life is kind of weird in that we tend to be separated from our families, which is different than how I grew up, but that's a whole other topic. So yeah, I think people having a good, strong community, having friends who have kids, with your kids to ride around with, ride bikes with, and all that kind of stuff. Sit in the backyard, have a beer, although maybe a not super pricey one, and just enjoy a campfire and have a good conversation.
Excuse me. I think that's really important because my wife and I, we were driving to DC to hang out with a dear friend of ours, somebody I grew up with, and to celebrate my son's 8th birthday. And as we were driving, we were talking about these things that would make us happy, and specifically, we were talking about the house that we bought in Colorado, years ago, and the potential to stay there forever, pay this thing off, because I think our mortgage is like in the 200s now on that house. If we wanted to, we could sell it and probably do pretty well today, and then go buy a bigger house if we wanted to, and maximize that mortgage and get into something different that would be different than what we've got now. And we started talking, and that's not really our style, but we started talking about all the opportunities that we could do, the things we wanted to do. Keep that house, pay it off, and then what do we want to do? And a lot of the things were all about the travel and the fellowship and hanging out and being with people. And I think what's important is we're having all these conversations now. It's not a reality right now. I'm still in the Navy, still be in the Navy for another year, 18 months, right? But being very intentional about that vision, I think, is so important. And I think it also helps you to frame those future decisions. The house we live in now, well below what we could potentially afford, but it's across from a park where we go have beers with parents every Friday night, and there's kids everywhere. We spend about 8 hours a day at these things, right? And that's what brings us joy. Our house will not be in a magazine and nothing that you'd ever necessarily look at. But I think it's important, and you hit a really important point, because it seems to me like you did a lot of this stuff, this soul searching and what would bring happiness before you started pulling the trigger. And you, did you have like a vision? Did you have something that you planned out? How did you and Mindy go about like setting that framework?
Yeah, for me, it was mostly and part of this is because of the reason I had decided to pursue this in the first place. I was running away from something. So the number one thing I thought about was I need to get to $1 million and no debt, just so I can have that 4% rule, the $40,000 a year to live on. But the weird thing in retrospect is I hadn't considered what happens after that. And as I got closer to it, it kind of terrified me, because you had asked about happiness. The other key thing, and I think maybe even more important than the community, is everyone needs some kind of meaning and purpose in their life. And a lot of times we get that through work. And when I say work, it's not the same thing as your 40 hour a week, 9 to 5 job. It could be something completely different. For me, it happens to be finishing off my basement at the moment and some other random projects I'm working on. But Yeah, as far as planning, I probably planned very poorly because aside from the money part, I didn't plan at all. So when it actually came time to quit, when I actually had the amount of money and knew I could leave, I didn't want to because I was terrified about not having the meaning in my life. Because no matter how stressful and how much I disliked my job at times, but I worked with good people. The work was meaningful. It gave me a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day, most days. So yeah, I would not recommend the way I did it to anyone. I would say try to build your life ahead of time. Don't validate yourself through your job. Try to build up a meaningful life outside your job. So if you ever decide to ditch your job, or it could work the other way around, your job could decide to ditch you, that you're not just devastated by that. So yeah, as far as planning, I was a poor planner.
Well, that equates tremendously to a military career. There's guys like us that are going to go 20 years in the military or further in the military, and our purpose, our mission, is oftentimes just about our military job. And we have seen it in our careers, with friends, with people that work with us or for us, that when that time comes up, if you're at that 20-year mark, you've had this purpose for 20 years to serve the military, and then afterwards, like, that all goes away,
Yeah.
and you don't have that purpose anymore. You don't have that mission that you wake up to and you go to work every single day. And that hits hard really quickly with quite a few people. And um, you know this thing called veteran suicide is real, and it happens a lot. And it's something that we support tremendously. Homelessness, that we talked about, up at the Veteran Community Project. A lot of people go homeless because they don't have a mission or purpose anymore, and they don't know what to do with their lives. And so, I think just this point of community, finding a purpose and a mission, is really, really important. And one thing that kind of bugs me about this so-called FIRE movement, the financial independence, retire early, depending on who it is, and the blog or the podcast or whatever it is, sometimes, often, like, whoever's talking comes across as like, hey, the whole goal is to, like, retire early so you can go just sit on a beach and drink Mai Tais and do nothing with your life, right?
Yep.
And that, like, really irks me the wrong way. Like, I'm like, I don't want to go just sit on a beach and, like, sip Mai Tais and do nothing. I mean, maybe for a couple of days or a week or something like that, sure, but, like, for the rest of my life, like, no way. And I think, like, sometimes, like, it gets mixed up in that whole, like, FIRE community. So I guess, where does money and being financially independent kind of mix into having a purpose and a mission, and community and having a tribe? Like, how do you fit all that together to do well? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I want to back up a second. That kind of thing annoys me too. You see these articles on some financial website, meet the couple who's hiking through wherever, and it's beautiful 25-year-olds in their camper van or whatever. I'm like, that might be okay for a little bit, but
Yeah.
you have to have meaning in life. So I think if you do it right, well, first of all, I think the FI part of FIRE is more important than the retire early part, because
Yeah.
even if you think all that stuff is nonsense, the early retirement, there's a whole ton of value in getting your money straight. So, and the reason is both sides of the equation. You could discover some passion or some new job that you want to do, which is great, or you could have something terrible happen. Last summer, my dad died after a prolonged illness, and he doesn't live anywhere near me. But because I had the financial independence thing going on, I could go out to visit him at a moment's notice, which I did like 3 separate times. So it's insurance against the screwballs that life could throw at you, the curveballs that life could throw at you. But the thing about meaning and purpose is financial independence actually allows you to pursue that more strongly. I had someone come on. I actually spoke to CU students earlier this morning, and one of them was like, "Yeah, I really want to give back, and if I'm not working, I'm not going to have the money to do that." I'm like, "Well, you're not going to have the money, but all of a sudden you're going to have 40 hours a week. You could give back in tremendous ways with that time. I mean, that's huge. Plus, if you do it right, you'll probably end up with more money than you think you would anyway. What people don't understand is a lot of people follow the 4% rule, and that's a worst case scenario. In most cases, you end up with a lot more money than you planned for. That's certainly the case with me. I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, financial independence, kid, a lot of times, so I'll back up a second. If you find meaning and you love your job enough that you would work for that for free, that's great. You shouldn't quit. You should stay there. But I think that most of us, if we're lucky enough to figure out what our true calling is, what really makes us happy and what really gives us meaning and purpose in life, it's probably not going to be the same thing as that 40-hour-a-week job. And by liberating yourself of it, you can pursue whatever that happens to be. So I think financial independence fits perfectly with meaning and finding purpose in life. It's going to be a little bit harder because no one's going to tell you what to do. Like, here's your computer job, code this for the next year or whatever. You're going to have to figure that out yourself.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of value in that too, through the introspection. And you'll learn a lot about yourself once you're financially independent and don't have a job, because you've got a lot of time to sit around and think and figure things out. So definitely a lot of value. And it's okay if you don't have it figured out from the get-go either. So.
No, I think that's great advice. I think, I'd encourage folks to go back and listen to that. Just there's a lot of depth in just that purpose. And I'll tell you, if you're doing what you love, you don't work a day in your life, right? I mean, of course, there's gonna be tough times and whatnot, but I think if you're doing what you're created to do, man, what an awesome state that is. I'm kind of curious on some of the nuts and bolts. Like what are you doing? Like, how'd you get to that? How'd you get to where you are? And I would encourage people to look at your website too, because you have a nice breakdown of the financials, but I'm just kind of curious. Like, I'm pretty fascinated on, obviously you guys do the real estate thing, but give us some insight into how you achieved, how you achieved this goal.
Yeah, I guess there's two basic halves to this. And I'll start with the first one because it's accessible to most people. And that one is just to max out the tax efficient accounts that are available to you. So if you're a public employee, you probably have access to a 401k or a Roth 401k. If you're a government employee, you have access to a thrift savings plan. Is that the same for the military as well?
Exactly.
And the TSP through the government is really, really good. They've got low cost funds. So it's excellent. If you are a government employee or in the military, max out that TSP. You're silly not to, because regardless of which side you're on, you're probably getting some kind of match. And if you're not contributing at least enough to get the match, you're leaving money on the table. So that was half of it. We maxed those out whenever we could. And the other half, I'm looking around right now because I don't consider myself a homeowner. I call myself a very long-term flipper, because we buy these crusty old houses and fix them up and sell them for a profit. The beautiful thing about that is if you own the house for 2 of the past 5 years and live in it for 2 of the past 5 years, you pay zero capital gains. So some of these houses we've made, our last one we made, let's see, we bought it for 175, put 125 into it, and sold it for 600. So we made $300,000 from it, and all that's completely tax free. We don't owe a dime in income tax. We would have had to have made over 200,000 more for us to own anything in taxes. No capital gains whatsoever. This one that we're working on now, barring some bad world things going on or the economy taking a dive in the next couple of years, is going to make us even more money than that. So what we do is we buy the worst house in the best neighborhood we could find, and then we spend the next X amount of years fixing it up. And we weren't actually going to do another one after the previous one, but this one was too good of a deal to pass up. So we jumped in, and here I am hanging doors and swinging the hammer again.
That's awesome. Do you do most of the work yourself, or do you hire it out?
I do. I don't know if you've tried to hire anyone in Colorado, but it's very, very painful. It's a good thing, right? Because the economy is really good and all these people have tons of work, but to try to hire anyone, I mean, I'll give you an example. I had to dig out an egress window for my basement, and I didn't even bother to get a quote, because actually my friend who writes for the Military Dollar got a quote for an egress window, and they wanted $12,000 for it. I dug it out myself. I jumped in the hole with a shovel and put in the window and the metal thing that goes around, and it was $1,200 total. So you can do this successfully with hiring out, but it's going to be much more difficult.
Yeah.
And again, if I did it, that's kind of the weird paradox about fire. If I had a normal job, I wouldn't be able to do this, but this side job, this side hobby of fixing up this house is going to make me more money than my normal job ever did. And I do it on my own terms whenever I want to, whatever time of the season I want to. I'm about to stop right now for the summer. So I'd much rather do this and have to go sit behind a desk for 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
So
how do you get your kids to like be on board with this? Like, how do they live in like shambles for 2 years?
yeah, I was thinking about that. The truth is they don't know any better, because when we bought that last one, they were young and this house had a pool, which is weird in Colorado. And that's one of the reasons we got it for so cheap, but that was incentive for them to move to this. But what we did for them is we made their bedrooms really nice. Like first thing, bought them new beds to kind of make them happy and appease them. And we get them involved in the process too. So they have ownership in it. And
Nice.
like my younger kid, with my supervision, knows how to work a nail gun. We
That's
even
awesome.
have little Hello Kitty ear protection for her. So yeah, you try to get them involved. But with that said, it does suck. This isn't it does suck sometimes. When you're doing a bunch of drywall work and Mindy's got a basket full of laundry that she just did, and then there's a coating of drywall dust on there. And
Yeah.
no one's happy. No one's happy after something like that happens. So, or I almost cut my finger off with a grinder, which almost happened too, but they're all still here. So it's good.
Good.
Looked like that one was a lot shorter. Is that just a quick view of it?
Not yet. It was a close call though. That was actually me doing the brakes on my car. But
Wow. That's crazy. And I think, is that more importantly than, I mean, kids are adaptable, right? With us being military folks. I mean, I know my oldest daughter, her first 5 years of life were 5 different duty stations, and she knew no better than to travel throughout Europe and in a backpack and, go to these crazy places that people dream to go visit. So I think they're very adaptable, but I'd be curious, and there's probably no real way to quantify this, but they are literally getting life lessons right now on how to be financially independent. You're giving them, it's like the best classroom ever on how to have a business, run a business, make money, and to turn something old and worn into something beautiful. And you don't have to buy a brand new house with a custom builder and I think the lessons, and I'm just kind of curious, are you guys very intentional about some of these lessons, or, because I imagine they're getting an education of a lifetime.
yeah, we try to be. Kids are interesting, and they're both close in age. They're 13 and 11, but they're 2 completely different children. But I think they get it, and we see things rubbing off on them. For example, we're not opposed to going to the thrift store. So especially our older one, she loves going to the thrift store on half price day and looking for
That's
new
cool now.
sweaters and jeans. So and I like that type of thing too. Not underwear and socks. I got to draw the line somewhere, but yeah, you never know what's going to rub off and what doesn't. So I think they appreciate it. I think they know we live unconventionally, but like for example, when I would pick them up from school, I'm one of the only males there, because that's kind of how our society is structured. If one person works, it's usually the male. So it'd be mostly the wives picking the kids up. So they definitely see we're different, but I think it's an ongoing experiment. Our younger one is a lot different. And I like to believe that this rubs off on them, and I get them involved in everything. Like we never buy them anything. If they want a toy, they have to earn that money themselves. We buy them what they need, and then anything on top of that, they'll earn the money for. Our older one came home from school a month ago. She's like, yeah, we're going on a trip to Switzerland. Like, whoa, it's the most expensive country in the world. How much does that cost? Like,
Yeah.
like $4,000. I'm like, okay, what are you going to do for work? Like, you better figure something out to do it in the next year. But I think it's good. My parents always made me work for stuff. And man, if your parents don't buy you a car, no matter how much of a piece of junk it is, you appreciate that thing because you work many, many hours to earn that. So there's a lot of value in that. And I do hope they see my work in this house and appreciate that and know what we did for them. I'm very open with them about money too. And I don't think they've kind of wrapped their heads around that. I hope they don't assume everyone is like us, because we're not. But yeah, we'll do another podcast in 10 years and we'll see how it worked out.
That's awesome. Well, I think you guys are thinking through things that it really, and I don't do this. This is not judgmental in any way, but when I look at a lot of, even my kids are young and Stu's kids are young, and I look at how some of the parents are accommodating these young children with buying the nicest things and just the lifestyles that the parents are emulating for the children. And you're like, man, your kids are gonna potentially grow up to be very dependent children on either you or some person, or they're going to see debt in an unhealthy way, or they're going to, and it's, you can see how our society has propagated this ideal, this American dream.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It breaks my heart, because the kid doesn't know any better. And then this financial illiteracy that then goes generation to generation, gets worse and worse. It's very real.
It's really sad. We were at a friend's house and this baby is sitting there in the corner with a baby Gap thing on, and the baby was making a load in its diaper. I'm like, the baby doesn't care about baby Gap. You're doing that to signal to your friends that you have money, or to make them think you have money. And yeah, where else was I going to go with that? Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in making people work for money, and having your kids figure out their true, authentic self. Like, what are the most popular, or I think one of the best things one of the best attributes you can have is to not care about what other people think of you. Once you can get over that, you're a much better, stronger, more authentic person. And the paradox of it is, once you stop caring, people actually respect you more for that, because they see you as a leader and not a follower doing all these things that are expected of us because we saw the new vehicle on the commercial or whatever. Yeah, it's weird. Society is funny. I'm a full-on capitalist, investing in everything, but some of the bad effects of it, and some of the way we're manipulated by commercials and advertisements are certainly toxic.
Yeah. So do you are you trying to get your kids involved in kind of the investing side of the house too? Are you teaching them about, what you're investing in, and kind of helping them get started, or is that a little too soon?
Yeah, what we do is they have to do work around the house. We give them an allowance, and then I give them 1% interest a month to try to teach them how compound interest works. Nice. So I wish I could get that on my bank account, but
yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'd be
12%
awesome.
a year in your bank account. That'd be great.
Yeah. So I show them, hey, it's kind of funny because the older one is the saver. So every month I bring them down to the basement and say, okay, I'm going to add the 1% now. And the older one will have like $800 in. So she gets $80 or whatever. And the other one's got like $30. So she gets $3. And the younger one gets all mad. Like, why does she get more money than me? Well, it's because she saved money. If you save more money, you would get more, I don't want to say free money, but your money would grow faster too. So
yeah.
Hey, so one question, I have some money that I want to give to you at your 1% terms. And that would be really, really great, because your 1% sound like 10% there, but I'm just busting your chops.
Yeah, that ends at $10. So
okay, $10. Gotcha. No, that's awesome. And I just, to encourage you, I think that is, it's setting up a condition, because, and again, you're very transparent with your finances on your website. I mean, you could afford to buy your kids pretty much whatever they desired, and you could probably afford to buy a car when they are of age to have a car. But I love the fact that, I was having this conversation with my 10-year-old the other day. I Googled what's the percentage of Americans that have over $1,000 in their bank account? And I did that. And then I was showing her an account that we put money into to save on their behalf. And we're just talking through different transactions. And we made her buy, she wanted a new tablet. So we're like, cool, I'll give you $100. No, I won't give you $100. I will turn in my old cell phone, because I want to get rid of all these cell phones that we're not using. It was worth $100. I'll contribute that. You have to pay the rest of the money. You pick your model and you can do it. And she did it. It was a lot of money. It was like $180 that she paid out of her pocket. Yeah. And she's 10 years old, but we did all the analysis, right? And in this, and I really was trying to emphasize, I think the website said 67% of Americans do not have $1,000 in the account
Oh, is
that they
that
can
amazing?
use. And I didn't know that. I just on a whim Googled it. And but I really like, it's sad, right?
Yeah.
It's sad because if life hits you and it hits you hard, but it doesn't account for how much they potentially have in debt and credit cards. And so these kids are bombarded all day long with this stuff that you're talking about, the advertisements and the commercials and the friends and the baby gap. And it's a hard job being a parent to really emphasize, hey, it doesn't matter what these people think. You can look at your account and you may not have the nicest whatever, but you have options. This account equals options. And trying to get that through their heads is tough.
Yeah. How do you teach people to live gratification and to think long term? Because that's what all this is about, right? Here, you can either have this now, or you could have this 1000x in 20 years from now. It's we're not. I don't think we're programmed to think like that. So it's something that has to be taught. And I don't know. I've had very little success in try to teach people this or show even my family these values. Like sometimes you have to go through a hardship, I think, to really appreciate it. But yeah, if you figure it out, please let me know. I will give you 1% interest on your bank account if you can design a course that teaches people how to do this. I'll say a 33% success rate too is all you need to do, because yeah, it's difficult. How do you teach people to prepare for that rainy day? It's the $1,000. I mean, that's crazy. That would be your hot water heater, which is a cheap appliance. If that died, that would all be gone. And not to mention a roof or like a furnace or something like that.
Yeah,
Sad.
it's crazy. And I don't know, I didn't dig into the stats. So, if someone's out there that actually studies this stuff and digs into it, full disclosure, it was just anecdotal to give my 10-year-old daughter a conversation, but I don't think it's far off.
Yeah,
I don't think
I would
that's
agree.
unrealistic. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm curious, as we're kind of having this financial discussion, like what are your opinions on debt just in general? Are you lean towards kind of more the Dave Ramsey, like get out of debt, pay off everything, use cash, or are you kind of more the Robert Kiyosaki where debt is awesome, or are you kind of somewhere in the middle?
Um, yeah, I think that is awesome, but you got to be very careful and know what you're doing. For example, we paid cash for this current house that I'm sitting in right now. But and I don't recommend trying to time the market, but we thought when COVID happened, we had already planned to do a cash out refi in our house. So we actually got a mortgage and invested the rest. I have no problem taking out debt at 3%, because that over the long term, the stock market is probably going to do much better. So other than that, though, I would never finance a car unless it was 0%. We do use credit cards, which I don't think Dave Ramsey likes. However, we pay them off every month. I'm pretty crazy about that. I usually log on once a week and just get my balance back to zero, because I don't like that kind of debt. The main reason we do those is for the credit card points, the like free hotels and travel
Right.
and that type of thing. So yeah, I'm okay with that, but in a very confined space. I don't over leverage myself, but we do have a mortgage on the house. That is the only debt we have, though.
Yeah, but I think, to be clear though, what you just said that stuck with me is you have debt on the house because you chose to have debt on the house. You bought the house with cash. You then refinanced out because of 3%, and you took that money and invested it. And and I'm drawing some conclusions here, but I'm assuming you took that money out, put it in the market or whatever, because the yield is going to get you greater than 3%, and you effectively are using arbitrage and different investment principles to your debt. Your debt is making you a spread. It's making you money.
Yeah, if you can't control yourself, if you're gonna refi your house and go buy a new car, even though your old ones are fine, or do things like that, I would not recommend doing this. But we took every cent we got out of this house and put it right into the markets. And I've got a spreadsheet that I look at almost daily to show how that experiment is done. So yeah, that's okay if used wisely, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's super powerful. And that you were not able to do that necessarily, back when you started this journey in 2013, but you've built up to that point, right?
Yeah, I also like having cash on hand. I don't think we'll be doing many more deals in life, but if one does come up, now I've got the resources to fund it. So that's another reason I'm okay with having a small mortgage.
Yeah.
One thing I know in your blog, you kind of talk about too, you're kind of a mix between real estate and is it primarily index funds that you're putting stuff into?
Yeah, we own I didn't know what an index fund was until like 2013. So I have lots of individual stocks, which are probably the biggest part of my portfolio, but
Okay.
now I play pretty safe. Almost all new money goes to index funds. Real estate, we had a trailer park. We just sold that a couple months ago. We do have real estate now. Besides the primary house, it's all in syndication deals. I think we've got 7 or 8 of those. One of those is with Alex Felice, who I think y'all might know.
Yeah, we know Alex.
Yeah,
Cool.
great
So
guy.
you kind of invest on the passive side as a limited partner investor?
Exactly. It's completely passive. We don't have to do anything at all. We get quarterly payments, and I put those. We actually have a self-directed solo 401k, which is like you can establish your own 401k. So I put all the syndication deals in those for the taxes. All those deals, the quarterly payments come back, and they're all tax deferred.
Nice.
So
that's awesome. That's some varsity level stuff right there. That's great. No, and I want to also, because you downplayed it so much, but if you go to Carl's website, I mean, he's even got a little button that you can click on that will talk you through some credit card choices, right? You have a number of resources on your website that are phenomenal, and I think you don't know the ripple effect that you have. I think you're probably not giving yourself enough credit because going to be impossible for anybody to accurately track, but I think you're making a huge impact, you and Mindy, just through the platforms you use and the advice you put out, and just the people you guys are, the example you're setting. I think you're impacting a lot more people than you recognize or even know at this point. And in your future podcasts and blogs that you push out are even going to do that more so. So you're awesome, man. Thank you for that.
yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It's always weird to hear comments like that because I started the blog mainly to amuse myself, and it still is kind of that way. It is monetized, but for the first 3 years, it made like $100, I think. So I did it for the love of writing and to try to inspire other people to save their money and maybe be more open with money too. Like if we all talked about money, I think we'd all be a little bit better off. Maybe we wouldn't show off as much, try to feel the need to show money we don't have by buying an expensive car. If it wasn't so taboo, maybe we'd all be in a little bit better place, but yeah, so be it.
Well, I think also that an important lesson probably to come out of what you're doing and what others doing is just the measuring, the tracking, and that's with anything. Like if you're gonna want to lose weight, like you better start measuring things. If you want to like be in better health, you better start measuring things. If you want to be financially free, you better start measuring things. You better start tracking what you're spending, tracking what you're doing, and having that budget and your blog of tracking your net worth and your wealth, like that. There's some success there, right? There's something magic about that.
Yeah, that's a great thought. One of my favorite quotes is the physicist Richard Feynman, and he said, the number one rule in life is not to be fooled, and the easiest person to fool is yourself. So it's pretty easy to deceive yourself. And I keep track of everything. I do pull-ups, and I've got a spreadsheet that shows exactly how many I've done and all that.
Nice.
That's
you
awesome,
got to hold yourself accountable because if you didn't track it, you might deceive yourself.
Yeah, that's good.
No, that's awesome.
Well,
awesome.
how do people get in touch with you if they want to learn more? Tell us about the website or what's the best way for people to get in touch with you.
Yeah, my blog is 1500days.com, just the number 1500 days. That's how many days I thought it would take to retire after I discovered the financial independence movement. We also have a podcast coming out. It's called the Mile High Fi Club because we are here at mile high altitude. So just milehighfi.com. We just released our first episode. So
Nice.
yeah,
we'll put that. We'll put a link to that in the show notes so people can check it out.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, David, you got anything else smart to say? What do you think?
No, man. No, I usually don't have anything smart
That's
to
true.
say. But
If you have anything dumb to say, that's cool too.
yeah, that's typically, I've got that covered. And I've got a spreadsheet guy in our business, so I have outsourced that, quite effectively, because that's not me.
This guy.
That's that guy. No, just again, thank you, Carl. I think, the more we can expose people like you and push your just your thoughts and ideas out. And I love the idea of transparency. Stu and I are extremely transparent about money. I'll talk to anybody on the street about the money I have or don't have. And happily, I just got rid of a 2001 4Runner because the window stopped working in my line of work. Like, I have to show my badge every day, and I'm like, I'm okay. There's a limit where I'm going to go, and I've hit it. But then I traded that in for my wife's paid off, multi-year-old car. So I think that idea, the idea of being able to talk about it, because I think there's a lot of people who would take their financial situation and their really, really nice brand new car and trade with the $4 million of investment that you have. Again, your numbers that you put on your website. I'm not trying to share your business, it's out there, but you're open with it, right? You're open with that. And I think it was beautiful. Like, when I saw it, even though we're so open, I was surprised, but I was like, man, that is freaking awesome. Like, that is exactly what, being transparent, open, and also living, practicing as you preach. And so keep it up. It's awesome. Hopefully a lot of our listeners will go check out your website, listen to your podcast. And if they want to reach out to you, how would they do that?
Yeah, they could just hit me up on the blog, 1500days.com. There's a contact form on there, and I'll talk you out of your new car purchase if you need some counseling. Would you rather look rich or would you rather be rich?
Love it.
I think it's pretty easy, but I'll talk you out of the new car.
That's awesome, man.
That's great.
Well, Carl, I appreciate your time, man. This has been a lot of fun. And I can't wait to come up and grab a non-expensive beer with you at your co-working space. And we'll go swing some hammers and build some tiny homes. How about it?
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. Thank you, David. And yeah, really ping me when you're up here. You
right.
could even stay over here if you're coming up for the night or whatever. So plenty of space.
Awesome.
Well, if you don't have fleas in your house right now, you will after us.
Oh, come on, man. Come on. I don't even have a dog. What are you talking about?
No, that's true. You don't even have a dog. That's why it's so shocking you have fleas. I don't get it.
Invitation revoked.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, go listen to this podcast. Go share it. Go subscribe to Carl's blog and his new podcast. And most importantly, go fill your storehouse.
Make it a great day, friends. Thank you.
See ya.
Sure.